Hello everybody, happy Thursday to everyone. I'm again selecting the video option for the discussion response in Module 4. And this week we were tasked to discuss a meeting and to critique various aspects of the meeting. And I decided to select a meeting that actually occurred this week in my company. It was the KGP CO's All Hands Quarterly Meeting. In this particular case, this meeting was held via a webinar. They were facilitating the meeting in a new building that we had implemented in Chicago. They had a few of the key players on the upper echelon of KGP management in attendance and presenting in this meeting. There were 4 specific management presenters, and I'm going to discuss each of them, how they did, I thought, and some feedback that I think I would have just looking on the critiquing standpoint of it. First person that presented is no surprise. It was our CEO. He mainly was selected because he is the face of the company, both internally and externally. In this particular fashion, he was battling an illness, and his voice was kind of weak. So it was really hard to understand him, and it didn't exactly help that it was a webinar either. So it was kind of a double-edged sword against him. One main critiquing point that I found that was kind of distasteful was that the webinar was 5 minutes late in its scheduled start time. And I'll talk more about that a little bit on why that particular instance is so important. In this particular fashion, or particular scenario, the CEO wanted to historically remind everybody how our business units have operated. He went into how they have evolved and where they stand now. We have 3 separate business units on the telecommunication side of things. We have inside plant business unit, we have outside plant business unit, and we have wireless business units, and that facilitates across multiple telecom players. In particular, the CEO wanted to talk about 5G. It's a big thing that all the telecom people are talking about right now, but he wanted to discuss how 5G is going to aid us in our field's daily involvement of activities. With it being such a powerful new network, I think he quoted that it's going to be some 200 times faster than the current 4G LTE networks, and that particular power is going to be able to facilitate our field technicians to use smart apps on their smartphones to be able to further condense and be effective in our projects. The second person that presented was the Director of Safety and Quality. He was a little bit less professional, I would say. He hammered certain things as far as on an installation standpoint or an engineering standpoint on how we can as a team can be more how would I say resourceful, I guess is the word that he would say. I would call it stewardship, in that the specifics that we do day in and day out, whether we're ordering too much supply or if we have a person that is being underutilized, that's actually costing the company on the bottom dollar. And so he had given direction and a challenge to all of the people that were on the call to be better stewards of our resources. The third person that presented was the Director of Wireless, again with the CEO discussing the business units and how they've evolved. This particular director is new in his role as the Director of Wireless, and his big focus again was on 5G. Specifically, he pointed out how each individual telecom entity that we service is currently positioned for the race to 5G. He wanted to reiterate to everyone that there is a sweet spot in all of the deployments, in that some particular areas are going to have the mom and pop tower type crews that take the one to twosie little things, and he wanted to make sure that we as a company, and to reiterate to everybody, that we as a company are operating within a sweet spot where we are leveraged appropriately, but not going too radical in the small stuff, so that we're actually making a profit in anything. And then he also noted some specific turf wins that we had on the CRAN side of things, which is AT&T's preeminent 5G implementation. The final person that presented was the director of finance, and this one was particularly odd in that he was not in Chicago like everyone else was in a live scenario. He was actually in California, so it was really kind of a webinar within a webinar. And the transition that happened between all of those that presented in Chicago to this particular gentleman that was out in California was not exactly clean. There was a lot of reiteration between the director and whoever was controlling the webinar, in that he needed some validation on whether he's presenting, if everyone can see it, if everyone could hear him, and all of that specific stuff resulted in a little bit of dead time. Again, another critique that I had was that I didn't exactly feel the content of his message was completely appropriate for everybody that was watching the all hands meeting. Much of his content included introducing members of his team. He would discuss all the various aspects and directions of his team, and would consistently mention different personnel that were responsible for those business units within the business unit. Most of the people that were on the call, however, probably would never actually have any interaction with any of the people that were on that. So I thought that that particular choice of introducing each and every team member was not necessarily the right choice given the context. He also wanted to introduce software changes that the business unit was going to have that would help both managers and lower level workers be able to track budgets and predicted budgets versus actual budgets of the project, and to try and correct certain things earlier on in the project so that the projects themselves don't become a big mess. The thing that he struggled with, I actually struggle with this. I've noticed even in this course of this presentation that I do this all the time, and I know that there's a lot of other people that are susceptible to this, but he used a lot of dead words like and things of that nature. What I had alluded to earlier, was that this is an all hands meeting, meaning the company consists of over 1,500 employees. Back before we were sold off to this latest company that owns us now, we were part of a company that was really hot and heavy on Lean Six Sigma, meaning they looked at every little detail, much like the quality director wanted us to have good stewardship with everything. Lean Six Sigma it's very process heavy, in that if there is a turn back or if there's wasted time, that those particular, especially if it's consistent, those particular things get rectified, because it's kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts. It's not necessarily the big hit on any one project, it's the culmination of a bunch of little hits. In this particular situation, with all of the players that are watching the all hands meeting, when you add up all of the salaries of all of those people, even if there is, say, 2 to 3 minutes of dead time in word choice that is not facilitating and is very meaningless in the course of the meeting, then that time actually does add up. Each of these people are going to have to fill out a time card, and as such, these dead words are really just going to cost the company more in the long run. It's not good stewardship of time, especially in a meeting that everybody is required to be at. So I guess my biggest critique in this particular circumstance would be, one, make sure that the transitions are smooth between the presenters, and number two, make sure that the context or the content of the meeting itself is applicable. And finally, I would say to very much practice, and get rid of the dead words if possible. Try and shore it up, make sure everything facilitates, and by all means, if you say that it's going to start it on time, because 5 minutes time elapsed multiplied by the amount of people that are on the call again is hitting the company's bottom dollar pretty heavy. Looking forward to hearing everybody else's response, and looking forward to hearing everyone's responses to me. So thank you very much. Good luck with week 4.